Hello, everybody. So the optimism continues. Another good day in the market. It looks like I'm gonna go back to my regular single stock analysis pretty soon because the market seems to be getting back to normal. I mean, at least I hope. Hopefully, I didn't speak too fast. We'll see. But anyways, Nasdaq up 2.5%, slightly down, but looked pretty much like a normal day today. Bitcoin though, Bitcoin did very well. $94,000. It crossed the $94,000 mark multiple times across the day, many times across the day. And MicroStrategy, of course, my top position, and I think a lot of my viewers love MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy was down 0.79% on a day where Bitcoin itself is up almost 3%, and it actually was down 2.6% from the open. My explanation for this, quite simply, is the ATM. I think the ATM today, this creates yield for us. The strategy at MicroStrategy is working, and given that the price to NAV as of right now is a 1.82, keep in mind, him diluting is a good thing for the stock. It's like printing $1 for $1.80, and you have $1 of dilution, but you get $1.80 of cash on the stock, and you turn that cash into Bitcoin right away. That's the Bitcoin yield for you, and that is working so far. This strategy is working so far. Now let me move on to an entirely different topic. Enphase. What do I think of Enphase? Is it time to get back in? And so the rest of this video is only about Enphase. So Enphase is a former channel favorite. Frankly, it's not just a channel favorite. Enphase was one of the heroes of the 2010s. Enphase had one of the most outstanding performance in the S&P 500 in the 2010s. They're out of it now because this stock has been entering a tremendous bear market in solar. I mean, what solar has been going through has been nothing short of, super sad. I don't even know what. I mean, between regulatory changes, NEM 3.0 being introduced, the NEM regulations, the feed-in tariffs going away, all of the headwinds that this sector has had. Enphase seems like the last man standing in the sector. If I briefly look at, say, like a Solar Edge, Solar Edge doesn't even have a shot anymore at this point. Enphase is kind of the last player standing in that industry, and I think they're set up to survive and thrive when there is another bull market in solar. But now is not the time. There's no bull market in solar right now. There's a lot of headwinds. When I look at the company, it got better, right? Revenue increased compared to Q1 of last year. So last year was really the bottom. The revenue is slowly going back up, but the growth is just very, very slow. And we are going to have tough comps, for the next 3 quarters. We're still going to have tough comps compared to 2 years ago, and so this business looks like it's struggling. But in my view, it's doing everything to do better and to survive this turmoil. So, for example, the gross margin is nicely up, and so that happens as they shift more and more of their manufacturing to the USA, and they get the IRA subsidies. Enphase is now an IRA subsidy acquiring machine at this point. It makes a lot of money from these IRA credits. The operating expenses are down compared to the prior year because they've been restructuring, and of course, expenses are down, margins are up, revenue up slightly. That means that your operating income is up. This company is setting itself up to survive. If I was a long-term holder, would I be alarmed? No, I would not be alarmed. As you know, I have an ability to just keep on a stock that I like for years. The problem is that I didn't keep Enphase because I needed to tax loss harvest, and Enphase was, it was in a loss in the 40%, and so I was like, okay, well, I gotta take my loss in Enphase because I thought there would be perhaps an opportunity to get back in. Point number one, but then B, sometimes you need the loss, and a lot of people sell towards the end of the year when they need a loss. I sold in mid-December. I tried my best not to sell, but in my view, there's no long-term change thesis in the thesis. The thesis is still the same. The sentiment sentence that comes to mind when I look at Enphase is, and it's a sentence from crypto, right? The bear is for building. You build during the bear market, and that's what they're doing. They're getting into a leaner structure, a very leaner company. They laid off a bunch of people. A bunch of people lost their jobs. They're, with the money saved, what do? They buy back the stock. So they improve their capital structure. They improve the ownership for the shareholders that are willing to stick with them. They have $1 billion buyback program. That's, I think they're still early in that program, but they bought $100 million this quarter. From what I remember in the quarter prior, they also bought a bunch. And so if they buy back $100 million each quarter, over time, that will help the long-term holder. And they're focusing on building new tech. These power packs, right? They're trying to compete against the Chinese makers, the EcoFlows, the Blue Eddy. They're trying to compete and get a seat at the table in that space. That's a space where Tesla, for example, doesn't enter that space at all. They are entering the European market with their balcony solar. Actually, surprisingly, my balcony solar video is one of the most viewed videos on the channel from like a year or 2 years ago. Balcony solar, very popular in Europe because it's plug and play. There's no permit. There's no loan to get. You just put the solar on the balcony or on the patio and you just plug it into the wall. And, when it's plugged into the wall, you just save power. Whenever it's daylight, you save power. And so these things pay for themselves in a few years. And so people are quite excited about them. And the Clipper Creek acquisition, well, that's been doing very well. They now have their own Enphase branded battery charger. And of course, he who has an Enphase solution for their roof is likely to choose an Enphase charger for their car. But if they don't, that's okay, because you can mix and match. You can mix and match with other techs. So I've said this again and again, and I'll say it again. Let's talk about Powerwall 3. So is Powerwall 3 a threat? Powerwall 3, as you know, it's a hybrid. It's got multiple lines, but it's still a string inverter. So it's a string inverter, but instead of being just one line in series, it's multiple ports, and I believe it's something like 4 to 6 ports that you can have, so mini strings of solar panels. So they really didn't have conviction, in my view, Tesla on this. They really went for like something right in the middle. And of course, Tesla was very sneaky or very smart, and given that Tesla is still a huge position in my portfolio, I'm going to say very smart. Tesla made it so that the string inverter in the Powerwall is essentially free. So if you want to get a Powerwall, you'd be very silly to buy an Enphase solution, because you get a free string inverter with a Tesla Powerwall, and so if you're gonna adopt a Tesla Powerwall, Tesla made sure that you adopt a complete Tesla solution, and they don't sell the Powerwall without the string inverter, and so that's why I think it's a threat. It's a threat over the long run. Now, if you happen to be pretty upset with the Doge and the Musk controversies, and if you think people are not going to buy Tesla anything anymore, and if you think Powerwalls are not going to be bought because they're Tesla, if you think Tesla Powerwalls are not a status symbol in fancy neighborhoods anymore, then you don't see it as a threat, right? But even if I agree that there may be a few sales that are lost for a Tesla Powerwall because of the, unrelated factors like political factors, I may agree with that, but I also do deeply think that this is very temporary. People have short memories. Fast forward 6 months from now that Musk has announced that he was, going back to Tesla full-time in May, fast forward 6 months from now, my guess is that people will have forgotten, because people always forget. And that's why companies like BP are still in business, because everybody forgot about the Gulf oil spill and all of that sort of stuff. So anyways, I think if Tesla cars are a major success and continue to be a major success, that's a catalyst for the Powerwall, because if you have a Tesla car, you'll want to stay with the same brand for everything. But then if Tesla cars don't sell anymore, and if foreign competitor cars sell, that could be a catalyst for Enphase, because you can get an Enphase solution with a Ford F-150 or whatever. But of course, these brand of cars, they're gonna try to sell their own chargers too. So anyways, it's kind of a mess. We don't know who's gonna win right now. But I will say that if you focus on the microinverters and you focus on that tech and you invest in Enphase for the microinverter tech, you don't sweat it too much because you realize that Enphase is a mix and match technology. Enphase has the ability to work with a Powerwall. It's got the ability to work with a Tesla charger. It has the ability to work with third-party solutions. If you follow Enphase for a while, for example, in Australia, they mix and match things all the time. And, Enphase tries to be the ecosystem and they try to own everything. And every company is going to try to own everything. They're going to be the mini grid for each house. But you can mix and match, and at the end of the day, it's the local installer who decides if you're going to mix and match, something like that. That's the way it works. So anyways, let's go back to the microinverters and talk about the microinverters. So the big catalyst, and this should be a thing in early 2026, the big catalyst for Enphase will be the IQ9, the next generation of microinverters. Gallium nitride is coming. And in my view, gallium nitride microinverters, and this may be a bold thing to say, but I think they will be simply the end of string inverters for commercial installations because gallium nitride can handle much, much more power. They're the next gen of power electronics. And they're amazing. They're nothing short of amazing, and so the need for bulky string inverters is going to be less and less if Enphase is successful at rolling out gallium nitride microinverters, which I believe they will be. And to illustrate gallium nitride and to explain how this is a shift in power electronics, I suggest you spend $15 on Amazon and try to get a gallium nitride charger, and then you'll see the difference. In fact, this is a tiny charger. It's as powerful as a big, bulky, these Mac chargers, these big, bulky, heavy ones. The teeny tiny thing here is as powerful as the big thing over here, and that's because gallium nitride is a shift in power electronics. It's a shift in tech, and that's going to be part of IQ9, which means it's going to have a smaller design. It's going to have more power electronics. That means more margin for Enphase. That means more efficacy for bigger and bigger and bigger installations as time goes. And I think that's going to be a game changer for Enphase, nothing short of a game changer. Furthermore, if the IRA stays the way it is, I ask you, what do you think is going to be the change in terms of the subsidy machine that Enphase is? Do you think they're going to get more subsidies because they're going to switch every single inverter to gallium nitride inverters? And I would argue, how much bigger are they going to be? So battery on the call, he said in the first iteration, you can expect 10%. But, as a mature product, how much more powerful each microinverter, how much more powerful is it going to be for each microinverter? Is it going to be 30%? Is it going to be more? It's likely going to be more than 30% more powerful. And because Enphase is getting paid by the watt, and remember, this is until 2034 that they're getting paid by the watt. That means that you might see an increase in 30% of the subsidies that they get just from switching from regular microinverters IQ8s to gallium nitride microinverters IQ9s. So that's going to be a big deal in my view and a big catalyst for the stock. IRA, let's talk about the IRA. Is the IRA going away? People have been telling me for 6 months that the IRA is going away. And what I've been saying is that, yeah, sure, you may see some stuff go away in the IRA, like, maybe the tax credit will be going away if you buy shiny solar panels, which is like the only game in town. So maybe the tax credit is going to be impacted. I don't know. But I think that the manufacturing incentives in the IRA are not going away because Enphase, let's face it, as, how many? If they had three, they had planned three. I think they still have two. I think they still have two manufacturing sites. Feel free to check in the report. But they had planned three. I think they still have two manufacturing sites for the microinverters. Two manufacturing sites in the US, made in USA. In my view, this is something that the former president of the US loved, and this is something that Trump is going to love too. Or, you'd be surprised, but as much as the two guys hate each other, they were both trying to get manufacturing back in the USA, perhaps a little different form of manufacturing. One was for more of a green manufacturing. One is for more for any type of manufacturing. But, I don't think the manufacturing subsidies are going away because, these laws, there's a lot of lobbyists that happen and they say, oh, wait a minute, if you do that, when we're going to lose the factory in my district, etc. So I don't think the subsidies for manufacturing are going away anytime soon, but I realize I may be on my own on this one. Anyways, microinverters are the superior technology. I think if you invest in Enphase, you have to be convinced of that. And I've done a lot of videos back in the day comparing the two, addressing, say, the FUD, like string inverter makers. They've created this FUD talking about the triple penalty. Oh, there's a triple penalty when you have a microinverter because you got to do DC to AC to AC to DC to DC to AC. And so you have a triple penalty. But when they do this calculation, they entirely ignore the absolutely outstanding efficiency that the Enphase inverter have. And the efficiency, by the way, is going to get even better when you move to gallium nitride power electronics. And so that triple penalty argument fails, in my view. And by the way, we have that triple penalty for everything we use today. Like every single electronic we use is DC, and our grid is made out of AC, so we already have that penalty just about everywhere we hang out. That's point number one. The string inverters, they're the old technology. They're an industrial product. They're an appliance. They're big. They're bulky. They're very heavy. Right? Microinverters are much closer to a phone or a charger. It's much closer to a little cube, a little charging cube. That's what the microinverter is much closer to, and that's a big difference in how you manufacture a product. When you manufacture a product, via quote-unquote the cube, you can have a factory just throw them out. Like you can just manufacture them like soda cans. You can manufacture them so quickly because they're designed to be manufactured at mass market. This is not the case of an appliance like a string inverter that has a lot of manual labor, a lot of heavy lifting that goes into play. Microinverters are light, they're easy to make, and they scale easily, which is why I think when solar picks back up, microinverters and Enphase should be in the lead again. And let me conclude this video by acknowledging some of the headwinds that Enphase has. Some of the headwinds. The headwinds, number one, and this is the one where I think I was wrong, is I never thought interest rates would stay this high this long. Like interest rates are still stubbornly high. You remember in September we thought Powell was going to drop the rates, in September. No, the rates have stayed the same since that 150 points rate cut, and the rates have stayed the same. So the rates are way, way, way too high. Of course, real estate in the U.S. is struggling. Families are losing their homes. People are being forced to move. And that's due to the interest rates. And so the last thing you have on your mind when this interest rate environment, the last thing you have on your mind, of course, is to buy an Enphase solution, even though these solutions save you a bunch of money. These solutions make you independent. They isolate you from the rise of the cost of electricity. I still see a future where most of the houses in my neighborhood have solar panels on the roof because it makes so much sense, because all of the roof space, the average home roof space, creates probably 7 to 9 times, and this is a Tony Seba statistic, 7 to 9 times of the power needs of your house can be created by just replacing your roof by solar panels. And if you take into account the fact that, well, that might change with tariffs, but in the pre-tariff days, China was dumping solar panels over the United States, literally dumping them. But seriously, they were cheaper than plywood, right? Panels like the 3-year-old panels, second-gen panels were cheaper than plywood, and you may remember me making that demonstration on the channel. So anyways, we're going to need much more electricity, and solar panels are going to be part of the energy mix. It makes very little doubt to me, and so I think it's going to make a comeback, but it's struggling in the USA. The USA is a struggle because we have a stubborn, unelected official who keeps the rates very high. Things are looking much better in Europe because Europe has Christine Lagarde, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but she is smart to drop the rates. She really is. I'm just referring to how I know her as a French politician. Anyways, solar panels. Solar panels are made in China. Tariffs don't help. That's for sure. They don't help because they're mostly made in China, and so if the tariffs stay the way they are, that's going to hurt Enphase. And then China is also a major exporter of gallium nitride. And in that case, tariffs are also not going to help because gallium nitride is heavily sourced in China. So for the Enphase story, we want the tariff situation to settle down and either not happen, or really we want a trade deal with a major trade zone or a free trade zone or something like that, something positive, and we want the rates to go down. And I think once these two things happen, I think Enphase will have all of the catalyst it needs to go back up. But right now they're still in the valley of despair. But frankly, they're deep into the valley of despair. I see the end of a tunnel being closer than not when I look at a stock like Enphase. But then again, I don't own it anymore, so take my assessment with a grain of salt because I don't own it anymore. Usually the stocks I cover on the channel are stocks that I'm heavily invested in. This one I'm not invested in anymore. I'm interested in getting back in. I don't know when I will. When I do, of course, as always, I will post it on the Patreon. So anyways, thank you for watching. This was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on X, follow me on Patreon. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.